the network analytic engines and the agents and their ability to help you monitor and get to root cause doesn't require any programming, right? You load scripts on. We're writing a lot of scripts. In fact, we've got an amazing R&D team that's creating scripts to handle all of the common issues that people would want to monitor for and get to root cause on. And so as an end user of this product, you can get those scripts, load them on as appropriate, and use them to root cause problems. However, if you're interested, I'll show you what's under the covers. And if you're even more interested, you could take our scripts and modify them to do what you want, or you could write your own from scratch, right? You've got a lot of possibilities here. But I think it's really helpful to kind of go through some simple examples to kind of get an idea of what kind of power these agents can have within the system. This first one is a simple hello world kind of thing. It's like the simplest script I could think of that actually did something. There's some boilerplate. In fact, if you look at this, most of this is boilerplate. I think there's really only 4 lines of code here that I wrote in this script. So with very, just a small number of lines of code, you can get some interesting things done. Just kind of briefly, there's information that we saw, versioning information, name information, things like that in some of the panels on the web UI, and that information comes from this little manifest at the top. And then we get down into the actual agents, the body, and within that we have an initializer, Python initializer that's going to run first time. And it does 4 things here. So let's kind of step through those 4 things and see what it is. The first one is it creates a monitor, what we call a monitor. What that means is it wants to monitor this specific value. There's a URI here that we got here, this string here. Actually what we did, Scott and I did this last Friday, I think, just went into Swagger, went through and found the value we wanted to monitor, and tried it out and got the URI back, and we just cut and pasted that URI into this. So it's very easy to figure out the URI for the thing you want to monitor. You just go to Swagger and try it out. When you find the thing you want, you cut and paste that in here. So that's how we got this URI. So we're monitoring the URI. What that means is that the system is going to create a time series data set for that value. And this one happens to be the inlet temperature. So this is the ambient air being pulled into the box. We're going to keep track of the temperature of that air coming in. So that's the monitor. So we've got a time series database now. And if we went and looked at the web UI with just that in it, we'd see this web UI, it'd have this information about the author and all that stuff, and it would have a graph there, and it would show the temperature, the inlet temperature there on our display. But let's do something more. Let's have a rule, and rules have conditions and actions. And the condition for this is just looking at that monitored value and saying when it exceeds 38, the condition triggers. Right? So it's simply a simple expression of just looking at that. You could have parameters that would add more lines of code here, but you could have parameters, you could actually adjust it, or you could do some learning. You could do baseline profile, figure out what temperature it's normally at, and then create a parameterize that value to look for to allow it to be within some band, right? So you can have more sophistication here, but just as a simple example, we just compared it to 30 degrees Celsius. And then we have an action, and this action is just gonna simply execute the CLI command called show system temperature when that becomes true. And then when we went to the web UI, if the temperature went up and this action would then be taken, what we'd see is the graph. We'd see a triangle at the top indicating that the condition was met. And if we clicked on that, it would pop up a window and it would show us the CLI output of the show system temperature there. And we'd see the output that was generated at that point in time when the threshold was crossed. Okay, so that's just a really simple example of a script. Actually, the reason we wrote this is because I was walking in to work the other day, and I saw this sign that said they were going to shut the water off at the site on the weekend. And I thought, wow, I wonder if they use chilled water to cool the data lab that the 8400's in. I wonder if we're going to see a change in temperature. Is facilities going to keep that cold the whole time, or is it going to change a little bit? So we loaded it up, and next weekend actually is when they're going to do that. I'm going to see if it actually changes. If the facility can keep the temperature in that room, or if it's going to go up a little bit.
So Charles, could you comment on if you follow the right format of the scripts using kind of the manifest and our libraries, how that manifests itself in a web page, please? Talked about auto generation. Maybe you can just comment.
Yeah. You know what? You mean the process, or?
No. So as scripts are added, there's they do also show up in the web UI. Maybe you can talk people through that.
Absolutely. So as you load agents onto the 8400, each of those, and basically the process is a little more complicated. You load agent scripts onto the 8400, and then you can create instances of those. You may have a script that you want to use to do the same thing, but for two different instances. For example, you may have two different uplinks, and you want a separate agent monitoring them separately. So you may want to create an instance of one agent script twice, right? So you can do that. But the bottom line, though, is that you can create these instances. And once you create instances of those agents, then as you navigate through the web UI and look at the analytics page, it'll list each of those agents, the information about those in them. And so you'll see the time series graphs and whatnot generated. And so what we do is we go through and look at this, as the script is loaded onto the box, we go through and look at the contents of it, and then we use that information then to generate that web page. I've got another example that's a little more complicated that maybe we can go through real quick. Actually, I had this. Maybe Tom, this is what you wanted. Did you want me to just show my next slide? Yeah. So this is it. So the agents are integrated into it. You can see the status level. I think we saw this before, but just kind of go over quickly. Right? Is that all these elements are auto-generated, and so that Python script that we saw in the previous slide would generate something like this, right? So you're not doing UI development, right? We take care of that for you, right? You can focus on what you want to monitor and what you want and what actions you want to take, specifically, and not to worry about the presentation part. I think I also mentioned earlier that there's a REST interface that's auto-generated also. It's a little harder for me to show the REST interface, but that's a programming interface, right? But we have the web UI that's generated, and we also have a full REST interface that's generated also for the scripts that you can use programmatically to access them.
There's a lot of functionality here that would port over to other products in the Aruba line. Is that possible? We're going to see some of this move from the 8400 to other pieces and parts within Aruba's world.
Absolutely. It's part of my mission.
Okay.
I had another example here. This one gets a little more involved. Client services. So we've got clients, and they rely upon some services that the network provides, like IP addresses, DHCP. And the 8400 has a DHCP relay function in it, so it can relay those DHCP requests up to a DHCP server and back. And it'd be really nice if those DHCP requests got replies back from the responses back from the DHCP server. And it might be nice to actually monitor that. And if that's not working right, then try and figure out why it's not working right. Why aren't they getting their IP addresses? And so we trying to think, what's the simplest script I could do, minimum lines of code and stuff that does something that approaches kind of this thing. And so I thought about, what are some of the root causes of the problem of clients not being able to get their IP addresses. And one could be that there's a configuration error. Maybe the relay's not operating correctly. Maybe the address pool from the DHCP server is exhausted. Maybe the DHCP server is having problems. Maybe CPU or RAM issues there. Resource issues. There could be some network service usage spike where suddenly there's a whole bunch of people asking for IP addresses and the server can't keep up with it. It could be a client relay connectivity is blocked where maybe the client or the 8400 relay operation can't actually talk to the DHCP server, or there could be some other issues. So I thought about, well, what kind of information could we collect in order to help determine whether this is the cause or not, right? And I've got some things there. We'll actually see them in the script itself, but it can be things like, well, first we want to capture and correlate all those configuration changes like we saw. Those are the diamonds that we saw in the graphs. But also we could execute a CLI show command and look at the DHCP relay status of it. So we could do a local CLI command. We could also maybe SSH to the DHCP server and execute a command. This is a Perl script, really nice Perl script that actually shows you the status of the resource, the IP address resource pools on the DHCP server, so you could actually see that. You could maybe also SSH to that DHCP server and execute top to see the state of the CPU and RAM. You could, and of course, kind of the more important thing is to be able to actually monitor the DHCP request reply rates over time and see how those change. And then also just for this connectivity, you could try and ping the server and see if you can get connectivity to that. So those are the kinds of things that you would manually do, maybe if you had an issue with these client services. And so let's see if we can automate that. And the way we automate it, or one way to do it, is to write an agent that does that. And this is more lines of code, but actually it's not that much. It still fits on a PowerPoint slide, amazingly. And so it monitors two things. One is it's monitoring the requests, the rate of request, and it's monitoring the rate of responses coming back from the server. So now if you went and looked at the web page of this agent, you would see two lines in the graph. One would be the request, and one would be the responses back. And you see those track pretty close, right? Because every request should get a response.
Is there a community repository for this? So for those of us that are, hello world's about the limit of our, coding prowess, you can kind of, capture people that really do know what they're doing and are well-versed in Python so that
you've got the slide.
You can steal all the good stuff.
I need to get to that slide, but absolutely, absolutely.
I got one before we jump to that, where we've got action shell, SSH admin, do we actually have to fill in the admin password there, or is there some way somewhere to pull that so we don't have a
what we did when we tested this is we actually used certificates for the authentication. So that's one way to do it.
Ask is because it's showing the SSH command right here.
Yeah, it does, and it doesn't actually have a password, right? And so where's that? And that was actually in a certificate, so we use a certificate-based SSH connection. The other thing I'll say, though, is that the scripts can have parameters, and those parameters can be encrypted.
Cool.
And so when the user enters them,
all the
they'll be encrypted.
Text,
Yeah, exactly. So
Mind
it would not be
that's
that.
how people do it today. Far too often. But we would prefer not to do that.
That was good.
And so we've got the two things that we're monitoring. We've got those graphs and everything, but maybe what's more important is the condition. And here we've got a little more complicated expression here for our condition. We're actually looking at the ratio of these two. We're saying what's the ratio of these, right? Because we should expect a 1-to-1 ratio. And if we see something different in that, if we see more requests than replies, and I just put 10% more, right? 1.1, right? Then we've got an issue. We've decided that's the. You could parameterize that. You could learn that. Over time, you decide how you want to actually fill in the parameter. In this example, I just put that number in there for us. And then when that occurs, then the action is to call a Python function. So the previous examples, the action was to execute a CLI command to capture the output and have it available for you to help get to root cause. In this example, the action is to actually invoke my Python function, run my function when this condition occurs, right? So those are the kinds of things you can do in that. And you can do anything you want, anything Pythonese that you'd want to do in that callback function that you'd like. In this example, I simply executed a number of commands to collect information. And so it's just doing those things I kind of talked about earlier. We can do a show command locally. We can ping the system. We can SSH to the DHCP server and do top and GCPD pool, right, to get that information. We can also send a syslog. The one thing cool about the callbacks is that you get an event data structure in that callback, which gives you information about why the callback's being made. This condition triggered, and so in that event, we actually get the request and response rates come in that data structure. We can actually use those, so we could do math on them, we could do computations, we could do additional lookup of information, or in this case, I just included them in a syslog message, right, so you actually could see what the numbers are on that.
Is it possible to use this for like configuration macros or zero-touch provisioning, where maybe an interface gets plugged into the device?
Yes.
You're monitoring that and execute the script and start configuring that port?
Absolutely, absolutely, you can do that. You know, our focus right now in this presentation is around root cause analysis. And so we're really not making configuration changes within the system. We're observing what they are and collecting information. But these scripts could also change configuration if you wanted them to, right? And so you can see, you could imagine cases where in terms of monitoring and getting to root cause, you may want a script to have an option to be able to take some automated action. If it sees some interface flapping, for example, and it's disrupting the network, you may want it to automatically go just administratively bring that interface down. You may want that as an option. And so as you install the script, you can say, yeah, I want you to take that automated action, or I don't want you to, right? But you could also have scripts that actually help in provisioning, as you suggest, right? It's a great idea, where an interface comes up and it could then take action and do some configuration based on that interface, based on maybe what's connected on the other end of it, based on the current configuration of the other interfaces or protocols within the system.
Whatever it is, or anything like that.
Yeah, so because there's LDP information within the system, and so when things connect and everything, you actually know if it supports LDP, what's on the other end of the cable, right? And you could take actions based on that. Yep. Yes, exactly. So this is kind of getting, we were kind of focusing on root cause here, but we're kind of now branching into, well, this analytic engine can do more than just monitor and root cause analysis. What else can you do with it, right? And that's actually what I wanted to talk about next. Actually, Scott, you had some slides. Did you want to talk through them a little bit?
Well, I'll talk about these.
Go for that.
Charles is, amazing, right? So this is really amazing work that we've been working on. I've been working with Charles closely for, it's been quite a while now, on a lot of network analytic engine, what we've been doing around this. And, it's, as we looked at, visibility, you're getting much deeper insight into the network. And we kind of show some of the examples of, you're able to collect both network information, but you also can go and dive in and get server information, the exact time these events occur. So if it's a event, something happens at midnight, you have data to back that up. You can start getting more intelligent logs and more robust scenarios. So when you get, the urgent syslog, it's filtered and you can filter it. You get this email, hey, there's a critical alarm, and you get a bunch of data with that. You don't just get, hey, critical alarm in the core. You get critical alarm in the core. Oh, and here's a bunch of commands that are already run for me. So if I'm at a ball game, I can go and look at that. And I can see if it's something I truly need to, call everybody in and dive into. So there's hugely powerful on what we're able to do. And this is, it's going to continue to evolve. And so as we dive into the increasing the visibility, adding these integrations, right? This is an easy integration solution where we're starting to integrate into other pieces of the network. We've shown several demos with other switches. So those switches are now sensors within the network. So we're expanding, the touch of the network into this platform. So you get more access to data, more network assurance, so that we're, starting to do some testing. The use cases start really expanding from what we've been able to do before.
So with that, as you extend that reach further into the network, heterogeneous networks, or solely available only within a homogeneous network?
Well, so one thing just to jump in, when you think about these agents and their interactions with things outside of the 8400, right?
8400, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We showed one example of where we were SSHing to a Linux server that's running a DHCP, service on it, right? And so within those scripts, right, you can access other systems. And if they have a REST interface or some kind of programmatic interface, hopefully you don't have to screen scrape or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But you can access it from those scripts. And if you can get information back, you could use that information within the agent to do things. So there's an opportunity to integrate with third-party products and services and applications, right? Through that ability, and that's one of the key things I think is that the scripts have full network access, right? They can go talk on the network, and so that allows you to be able to integrate things together more easily.
Yeah,
And I think we got our last slide is going to talk more about ecosystem, and maybe you've got one also that talks about.
We got a
SE.
couple kind of cool things around.
Okay.
This is this expanding into anything with an API. We're seeing APIs across all kinds of different vendors. Microsoft and Office 365 is putting out a ton of APIs. So there's a lot of these external integrations that are possible. And one of the comments we mentioned earlier was around community. And there's been some comments around on the Twitter feed of, some people are just, you're a network admin. You don't want to learn programming or you want to ease into this. We understand that, and we've been looking into that as,
Finally, someone understands that.
We're using the Aruba Solutions Exchange, and we have an R&D team building a whole bunch of scripts. So we're going to be priming both Aruba Solutions Exchange and GitHub with these scripts that can be easily added to the box, so that you can go in and use the parameter system, and so you can just select, customize what you want for the non-programmer savvy engineer. You get to just go program with a UI. You can go and program that.
You just fill in the web form.
Yeah, it's just web form.
That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Looking at that solution exchange, so it sounds like we got a community, we got an app store in a sense, which someone actually tweeted about. The bottom there, if I'm an end user, I contribute a script to this. A big story behind the 8400 has been security, making it very secure. So is there some kind of an admission process to get your script listed in
Yeah, so the Aruba Solutions Exchange team does some sanity validation. The community also can self-moderate that. And we're also going to delineate the Aruba certified set of scripts and the community scripts on the UI. So if you go to the 8400 and you go to the ASE connector, you'll be able to separate what are Aruba certified and what are just community scripts that have been put on ASE. And then there's the GitHub, where GitHub gets to be more open because you're going to be downloading those scripts. And if someone's developing there, you're going to download it, you're going to manually update that. We won't be in the middle of that, but on the ASE system, we're going to have a set, and there's going to be a tag associated with all the scripts that are Aruba certified.
Okay, so I'm hearing there's not a rigid requirement to be able to participate.
No, exactly.
So it's up to you as the wise administrator to make sure you know what you're running.
Just like you have bash access.
Yeah.
So you have choices, but we don't want to get in the way of the community. So the community has to be able to easily develop and contribute, and that's kind of the
Think of it like open source, right? So anybody can contribute open source to a GitHub. It usually takes the module maintainer to mainline it into the next release. It's the same basic process. So we don't want to get in the way of collaboration, but for things that'll be Aruba certified, we'll look at the community, look at our own progression, and when we think they're ready, we'll go ahead and bump them up to kind of approved and certified.
And this is, at this time, only available within the 8400 platform. Are you going to seed some people in the community with 8400s to help, spur this?
There's kind of a multitude of options there, including kind of software simulation that we'll talk about at a later point.
Hardware, real,
Yeah.
VR is all fine and dandy, but
under your desk. Right?
Remember that part about 1,000 watts of line card? I don't know if that'll plug into your living room socket.
You can make it happen. I have a lab.
Keep your feet warm.
And as the Aruba, we have this great community in Airheads, so we're going to embrace Airheads to really kind of tie these together.
Sure. Because
we have the Aruba Solutions Exchange, we have GitHub, and we just kind of the user community use that as a great building point to tie everything together. So I think this is definitely, we really want to be community forward, and we're going to seed it. So like all those scripts that our team is writing, they're going on GitHub. If you look at the UI, you can go and look and open up any script from the UI and copy it out of there if you would prefer to do that instead of going to GitHub.
I prefer to do that, honestly.
Navigate
through a bunch of GitHub stuff. It's there. It looks amazing. It's easy to work with. You already have you've done all the work, which all the other alternatives make you do all the work, and then some, and even then it doesn't even work. Yeah. So that's really nice that you're trying to lower the barrier of entry to let you actually do things as opposed to go visit 1,000 websites and still not do anything.
Yeah. Oh, and I know when I go and write stuff, I like to reference other people's things that are already working, and then go and modify it a little bit, like the Swagger interface, being able to go and create new scripts by finding that value in Swagger that I really want to monitor, because I've hit issues on it, you can easily just copy it from there into the NAE engine. It's really simple, straightforward, and that's kind of the we say simple, but it's an attempt. We're going to do as much as we can to make it as simple as possible, but it's within the confines of the system. So it's pretty cool.
So backing up just a second to the root cause analysis and the analytics overall, one question that I think has come up is, how are you dealing with encrypted traffic? What's the strategy there? Considering that's on the rise, we talk about cloud, we're talking about all these things, and encrypted traffic is notoriously difficult to figure out what's going on and how that's a problem. What's the strategy there?
We have something coming up around the ecosystem later, but Charles may want to take a jump on it right now.
Yeah,
Encryption.
or I'm not sure what slides
Or
you
we
have
want to
left,
cover
or-
that at the end.
Go for it.
Well, let's come back to that.
Yeah, no problem.
Come back to it. It kind of falls into the entire ecosystem.
Okay.
And as we looked at the network analytic engine, we wanted to things we're working on as we drive this forward. This is really, we have a lot here, but there's more we're working on, more we're driving forward. We want to make sure that there's more functions. We kind of mentioned about some of the machine learning, making that easier, making it more robust. Other functions to make this monitoring easier and simpler, we're driving forward with. And integrating with other sensors. So continued deep integration with other sensors within the network, just within the Aruba ecosystem, but outside of that. So as this REST API focus, we can reach out and talk to many other devices as the network expands and is integral to this. And then continue to ramp up external integrations and external use cases. More of that server, combining here's a network client service, combine that with the server that's hosting it, and really tie those two together with robust alarms and alerting that are very well combined. Mm-hmm. So working with third parties and externals, vendors to ensure that really comes together.
You're showing connections to SSH to here and there, but it could just expand further into WMI calls or PowerShell or various variants along those lines. The sky's the limit, especially if it's Python underneath the covers. Basically, anything Python can do, you can do.
Yeah.
So you may call an API to service now.
Yep.
Exactly.
Or you could generate something in Slack and whatever.
And as we kind of were just talking about the community, we're going to continue to really push on expanding the community and making that super robust. Is critical to the success of this, and this solution is continuing to enhance these things. I think I will hand it back to Charles to wrap up. And
Yes, I wanted to, this is the last slide that we had, and I wanted to kind of back up quite a bit and look into this, look at this network analytic engine and how we're using it. We talked a lot about root cause analysis today, but when you think about analytics generally, right, we have a number of products that do analytics around operations analytics, Net Insight, and around user entity behavior analytics, Introspect. And when you think about an analytics system like this, what happens is you need to collect data and provide that data up to the analytics system. Analytics system then does feature extraction to extract the relevant features, and then processes the analytics on those features, right? And part of what we're doing with the analytic engine is we're enabling the infrastructure below to be able to do that data collection and that feature extraction, scaled out across the enterprise network, and then provide those features up to the analytics system in order to run the network-wide analytics on that data. And so we get scalability and performance out of this architecture. And so what you'll see is, one of the comments you can make is that this is all about big data up here, right? And big data means a big arrow going up. It means a lot of data going up to the analytics in order to do an effective job, right? An alternative is to instead extract the features, the intelligent sensors at the bottom, extract the features of the information, and provide that up to the central analytics system in order to get that scale and performance that we're looking for. So there's a strong focus on enabling these platforms to be able to interoperate and complement the larger analytic solutions that we have at Aruba. There's a question about encrypted data, I think, right? And so, when you look at encrypted data from a security perspective or whatnot, right, it is encrypted, right? And so there's not a lot of information you can get out of the actual encrypted data itself, unless you want to go through the process of decrypting it, right, which is challenging. And so what's more interesting is looking at the patterns of communication, right? Looking at the frame sizes, looking at the inter-frame gap, looking at the times that the communication is occurring between the clients. So all those communication patterns are actually the relevant information that you want to be able to use in your analytics to determine what's going on, right? This is a common technique we've used in our analytic systems, is to actually look at the patterns of communication. And that's where the sensor capability that we have down in the infrastructure becomes very important, because we don't have to stream all of the packets up to some central system in order to look at these, right? And try and figure out what's going on. Instead, what we can do here in the network level is to observe the communication patterns, extract those features of the communication patterns, how big the packets are, what are the interframe gaps, that type of information, and then provide those features up to the analytics system in order to do that processing and achieve the goal you're looking for, which is looking at encrypted data and being able to try and figure out, what it's doing based on the characteristics of those communication patterns. Right? So that's the approach we're taking.
One question: the Aruba certified scripts.
Yes.
Are those supported, or are those you're on your own?
Yeah, they'll be supported.
They're fully supported, so if you can call into support and say, hey.
Yeah, exactly. That's the entire premise of having that Aruba certified section. We want you to use this, and we want support to be standing there right with you should you encounter a problem.